All right. Trying to get all my technology in gear here. This is Professor Sipes here. Hello, everyone. I was trying to think of things that would be helpful to discuss, and I thought as we're headed into jury week, what better thing to discuss than how to healthily and helpfully prepare in these next 2 weeks leading up to that wonderful time of year that we all love so much. So, as I'm getting this ready, okay, I think I've sort of got things almost set here. So much to look at. All right, yeah, so how to head into jury week in a healthy and helpful way. And what I'm going to talk about in this next period of time, I'm not sure exactly how long this is going to last, is we're going to talk about suggestions on what to do 2 weeks before your performance, which is this week that we're looking at, that we're entering. And then what to do 1 week before your performance, so that would be next week. And then also what to do if you realize in these next 2 weeks that you've procrastinated perhaps just a little bit too much. All right, so there is a solution to that, and we will get to that. So should be fun. All right, so let's go to the first slide. The first couple things I want to talk about have to do with just kind of getting your mind ready to accept all of this, right? And to approach all of it. The first thing is that the teachers truly want the best for you, and I want you to keep that in mind. I think juries can so often be this daunting, scary thing, and we think that we're being tested, right? I would urge you to think of this in a different way. I want you to think of this as their way to see all the great things you've done throughout the year, right? They are tracking your progress in your degree program. They are your cheerleaders. So keep that in mind. Now, sometimes, I'm not going to say that I've seen this happen everywhere, but sometimes students feel like there's somebody out there, there's a teacher that may not be rooting for them as much. I hate to even bring this up, but I think it's important because even if it's not a reality, it might be a thought in our mind. So if you feel that there is a teacher that might be out there like waiting for you to fail, waiting for you to mess up, here's what I would say to that. Just don't obsess about it. There's absolutely nothing you can do if that's the situation to change that person's mind. All right? Or it would be very difficult. And this is a lesson you can carry with you the rest of your life. It doesn't even matter if it's a non-musical thing. If you think somebody doesn't like you, that is a distinct possibility. We all have people that don't like us. That's okay. That doesn't mean you have to change yourself. It doesn't mean you have to prove yourself even. So take that pressure off of you. Go into that jury determined that no matter what, you are going to do your best. You are going to focus on the music. And who cares about that other person? All right? I feel a little bit dangerous saying that, but it has to be said. So focus on the fact that the teachers are listening and looking for improvement, any sort of improvement. And the chances are, if you've been practicing this entire semester, not even every day, but if you've been fairly consistent, you've been listening to your teachers in your lessons, you've been truly trying to apply those things to your playing, chances are you will improve, right? So hold on to that fact, all right? If you're a freshman or you're a first-year student at the school, know that this jury time is really a good time to just set a baseline for you. It's so that the next time they hear you, they have something to compare your performance to. All right? So, especially for you newbies, take a couple notches off of the pressure valve, right? And just know that you're going to be going in and you're going to do what you can do, make some music, and that is good. Okay? All right, another thing to think about is you can think about the fact that the teachers are going to be listening to student after student after student. Now, I can tell you from being one of those teachers listening to juries, that whole experience of listening to lots of students can be exhausting, right? And especially if you've got a lot of students in a row that maybe you can tell that they're clearly nervous. It can be a really hard experience for the teacher. So when we get someone on the stage that clearly is there to just make music, that is a real gift to the teachers. And they're your audience. And if you were doing a regular performance, that's what you want to give your audience. You want to give your audience the gift of music. All right? So try to think of that too. Another thing to keep in mind is that no performance is perfect. So don't even set that expectation for yourself. It's only going to make it harder for you in the long run. So again, focus on the music that you are gifting your audience or the teachers. All right. Now, I should say as a caveat, maybe once in your life you'll give a perfect performance, or twice. But when that happens, you just thank your lucky stars and you move on. All right. So again, perfect performances are nobody's expectation. At least they shouldn't be. They should also not be the expectation for the teachers that are listening to you. So there you have it. So again, take some notches off of the anxiety level. And I realized I have no idea to see how much time I'm taking. So, all right. I've already said this once, but my last point on this slide is important. So you're going to be focusing on what is important. And that is the music. And we want to see how you feel about the music. All right. I'm going to touch on this a little bit as we go throughout these slides and go throughout these weeks leading up to juries and up to the jury. But it's good to have that in the back of your mind. Remember, it's the music that is important. All right. All right. Going on to the next slide. All right, so we're now at the 2 weeks before the end of the semester point, right? So here are some things that, whether it's for a jury or for a performance, these are the things that I keep in mind at this point in the game, because it's a different point in the game, and that's also important to remember. All right, this week, what I encourage you to do is to do some final touch-up on your difficult passages. Hopefully you know what those difficult passages are. If you've worked with me, you know that I always, as I'm learning music, I put indications, I put post-it notes, arrows, symbols in my music to identify very quickly and easily for me what those spots are that need to be practiced on a regular basis. So this is the week to do your final touch-up work. Think of all the different ways you can practice that. Come at it, all those passages from different angles until you can't think of any other way to practice it, all right? Don't just keep playing it over and over and over again the same way. Take the time to find clever, fun ways to strengthen everything, all right? At this point in the game, I would hesitate to change fingerings or bowings or breath marks. If you really have to, and you can find a quick fix that you can rework into your technique quickly, all right, so be it, then do that. But at this point, it can be very dangerous to make last minute changes, so keep that in mind. Another thing you can do this week is you can do what I call on the porch practicing. It is some of my favorite type of practicing because it doesn't involve your instrument. So with on the porch practicing, what you literally do is take your music, or if you have it memorized, you don't need to, but I think it's good to have the music, and go out on a porch 6 feet away from anybody. Pour yourself a glass of lemonade or water or whatever it is you drink, and take your music out there, maybe with a pencil, and you're gonna do all this exploration of the music away from your instrument. So what am I talking about? It's things like looking over the music and reminding yourself, maybe for the first time, what the form of the piece is. If you know what the form of the piece is, then ask yourself things like, okay, so if you've got some sections that repeat with very similar material, what makes those similar sections different? And then look at those differences and say, is there something I can do to my performance of this to highlight those differences? Because chances are that the composer made those differences to help make the music more interesting or to highlight a new emotion. Who knows? So that's something you can look at. When you're on the porch, you can practice some of the rhythmically challenging sections. You can practice that by clapping, by counting out loud, by walking around on the porch, by conducting and singing your rhythm. So many different ways you can play with rhythm on the porch. Another thing you can do, you can think of different adjectives that capture the spirit of the different sections of your piece. Make it come alive, or come up with a storyline, or come up with different characters that the music represents. So then when you go to play the piece, you're going to have dialogue between characters. It's going to be so much more fun and interesting. What else? If you happen to like theory and you're good at labeling chords, go ahead and label some chords if you haven't done that. Figure out which tonal areas the composer is exploring and wandering through. Let's see, what else? I'm kind of blanking on other things right now, but those are some examples of on the porch practicing. Listening to recordings, that could be another thing you could do. Listen. Sing melodies in your music. That is always good. It helps you, if you're not a wind player or a singer, to latch into where one would breathe if they were singing the melodies that you're playing. It's really important to find those spots so that you have the audience and you have those spots to breathe. All right? That leads to my next point on my little list here. All right? So when you're back at your instrument, you can actually do this on the porch too. Find places in your pieces where you can breathe and where you can relax. Now, obviously, if you're a singer, a wind, a brass player, you're gonna already know, hopefully, where to breathe, right? But I'm talking also to string players, to pianists. We need to breathe too. And when I say find places to breathe, it's for the purpose of not only giving space to your music, but it also is a check-in point for you to say, I'm okay. I can relax here. I'm going to check on my muscles. I'm going to check on my body. I'm going to check on the state of my mind. And I'm going to use that point to just regroup. Okay? When you're performing, especially in a nervous situation like a jury in a high pressure situation, which it's high pressure because we make it that way, right? It can be easy for time to compress on itself. Time seems to go much faster than it's actually going. So just know that you will have time to take those breaths and to have those check-in points. And those points, if you've worked them into your practicing, will serve as a great way to just kind of help calm you while you're performing. But again, I need to stress this. You have to actually practice breathing and relaxing and doing these things in these weeks leading up to your performance, okay? If you don't, it's not going to be a natural instinct. And when you get onto stage, lots of things disappear that you think are natural habits. And then those yucky habits come back in and take their place. So build this in as a habit. Another thing for you to do this week, and this is something that I don't hear discussed a lot, but it's really, really important and helpful. Make sure you know how you're going to choose your tempos for the pieces that you're performing. All right? I think this really applies to fast stuff, because I'm sure you've all, or many of you have been in this situation where you start off a performance way too fast. And then what happens? Oh my gosh. You can like get a couple measures in and you're like, oh no. And that's always a nerve-wracking situation, right? So I, especially in these last stages, am really careful to practice choosing my tempos. And the way you can do that, my best piece of advice is, first of all, find your piece. Like I'm not doing. Okay. So I'm gonna like look at this fugue that's a pretty fast fugue, and it starts in 16th notes. Now, I could play that faster. However, at the very end of the piece, there is this lick that I love, but it's in 30-second notes. So it sounds like this. That was weird. Oh, I did it the wrong hand. Okay, so it's really fast. Now, if I chose to start the whole piece, there's no way I'm going to be able to successfully play those 30-second notes. And that's like the high point of the fugue, okay? So what you do is before you start, when you're doing this work, you say, where is the most difficult part of the piece? Okay, so that's the first step. Then the second step is this. What tempo can I play that difficult passage my best? Okay? We're not talking about like what I wish I could do. Who cares at this point, okay? It's what can you do with what you've got now. So figure that out. So I'm going to figure that out now. Let's see. You might have to do it a couple times till your body settles into it. My brain was like, oh, okay, yeah, that feels okay. The first couple times I freaked out, right? So you're bridging, in a way, the tempo that you want at the end or in that difficult passage with the very beginning, all right? And I would say the majority of the time, the material at the beginning of your pieces are going to be easier. Not always, but I would say 95% of the time. So that's why this exercise is really crucial. So, but this takes time to be disciplined and to figure that out, okay? So that's that next step to do this week. All right, do that with all of your pieces. If there's a piece where it has multiple tempos, go ahead and make sure you know what you're doing for all those different sections, okay? And make sure those tempos that you've chosen that are good are consistent every time you start, okay? Oh, and I didn't actually include this, but this is part of it too. So once you know that information, then when you're practicing, make sure you do practice that whole process. So you practice hearing that difficult passage, finding the pulse that works for that tempo, going to the beginning, and hearing that in your head before you start. A lot of people get freaked out about that. It's called audiating, I believe. That's the term I know. Hearing something in your head without actually playing it. But you got to do that, right, for performing. So get that in your head and then try it out and see how successful you were. Takes practice. This is the time to do it, folks, okay? So practice doing that. Now, at first, it may take like 3 minutes to 5 minutes for that whole process. But after you've practiced it a bit, that time is going to get smaller and smaller, and you're going to get better and better at it, okay? All right. Next thing to do this week, practice under tempo. I cannot stress this enough, all right? Most of us practice too quickly in general. And a lot of students I work with also tell me, well, I can't practice at any other tempo than the one I've finally achieved. That's a really poor excuse. I'm just going to say that right now. It's not good. You should be able to perform your piece at multiple tempos, and you should be able to play it slightly under tempo. Okay? So when you do that, it is proving to yourself that you have control. Okay? You are not just putting yourself on autopilot and letting what's going to happen based on like what people call muscle memory, which there is no such thing called muscle memory. Our muscles do not have memories. Performing is all about your brain, all right? So practicing under tempo is ensuring a connection between your brain and your hands and your ears and your eyes, everything, all right? So practice under tempo, even if it is difficult for you at first. It will strengthen your playing at whatever tempo in the end. All right, the next thing to do this week is to do practice performances at tempo, okay? I just talked about performing under tempo. And you can do practice performances under tempo too, but also do it at tempo, what you would like to do when you perform it at your jury or at your performance, all right? What is a practice performance? For me, a practice performance is when you intentionally sit down and you pretend like you've got an audience and you tell yourself, I am going to perform this piece in its entirety. No matter what happens, if I have a memory slip, if I mess up a run, I am going to keep on going. All right, I'm going to practice keeping on going. Along with that, you practice at this time talking yourself down off the ledge if you start feeling like the performance is not going the way you want it to be going. All right, this is a reality. This happens. In fact, in most of my performances of, say, a full recital or even one piece on a program, I will usually find or encounter moments of doubt sprinkled throughout, okay? But I regularly practice in my practice performing, turning off the negative tapes that start to roll when those mistakes start to happen. Tapes like, oh, you shouldn't be a musician. Tapes like, you didn't practice this enough. Tapes like, I did that in the practice room just fine. Why isn't that working right now? Or, I don't know, there's lots of negative tapes that happen. but you need to practice turning those off, okay? And everybody finds a different strategy. My strategy, I'll reveal to you, is that when those tapes start playing, I try to play another tape on top of it, and that tape is very simple. It's sing. Keep singing. Sing. If I start singing along with the music that I'm playing, it does not allow for any other tapes to take over. They may like knock at the door, but if I keep telling myself in a loop, sing, sing. It's a mindfulness exercise, right? It's telling myself, don't think of the past. Don't think of the future. You think of now. All right? A really good thing to practice. Practice performing. What else? Oh, so the key point in practice performing is go for the root of what you're doing. What is this piece about to you? Refer to those adjectives you came up with in your on the porch practicing, right? What's the spirit? What's the character? Where am I going with this? That's what you want to practice when you're doing practice performing. All right? Oh, and going back to the tempo thing, when you're doing a practice performance, take a little bit of time, make sure that you're being thoughtful about the tempo you choose to start at. Okay? There's probably other things, but that'll give you an idea. One other thing I want to add about practice performing. You can do this for other people, but hey, right now in this moment of our lives, live streaming is huge, folks. And people are so thirsty to hear people playing music because we can't go to live concerts. We can't, we can't grab a friend in a practice room and say, listen to me. We can't even go to our teachers and do that in person, right? So use technology to your advantage. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, Twitter, wherever, go ahead and live stream. Or if you don't want to do social media, I get that. Instead, you can just use your phone or your laptop to record, and then you can send it as a file to your mom, your dad, whoever, your girlfriend, boyfriend. Send it to somebody and share it with them. Just the aspect of having the play button going or recording, that's going to raise and elevate your anxiety level a little bit. And that is important in practice performing, right? I didn't have that when I was a college student, and I wish I had, because I was always too sheepish to go to somebody and say, hey, can you hear me play? So use technology. Oh, and I was going to say too that when you do that, I think you'll be really surprised by how supportive people are that are listening to you. And that is good too, because you're going to get all this positive reinforcement from other people that you'll have in the back of your mind and in your heart when you go to perform your jury. And that's going to set you up for success, okay? So even if you make like a lot of mistakes, I bet you anything, your mom, your dad, your loved ones, they're going to be like, yes, you're amazing. And that's what we want. All right, my last thing on this slide has something to do these 2 weeks before, or the second week. Well, anyway, 2 weeks before the jury, is to experiment with different tempos. This kind of goes back to the point about practicing under tempo, right? So I said back when I was talking about that you should be able to play at other tempos. Yes, you should. So experiment with different tempos, not just for comfort, but what I find is that it's a really fun, creative activity to do. When you play things really slowly or a lot faster, you're going to hear different ways of hearing phrases, of hearing where the melody is going. And so it's going to just keep your music even more interesting and give you ideas and spark your imagination. And at this point, you've been drilling things for weeks and weeks and weeks, so things can be a little bit stale. So this is a way of refreshing that a little bit. So that's the last point. All right, so hopefully that'll give you plenty to do this week. Let's look at what we do next week, okay? And I'm going to, how am I going to do that? I'm going to do something with this slide, or you can email me and I can send you the link to these slides. Oh, I can put it in the comments actually, to the YouTube video. And you can go to the link and you can refer to this later. Okay, 1 week before, here's some things that you should do in my mind. And this is what I do. First of all, move away from detailed technical practicing. So on the previous slide, I said that was your time to finish, really drilling those technical passages. Well, 1 week before, even though this might sound crazy to you, stop. Don't do the detailed technical practicing. And if you look at this image I have on this slide, I put that on there obviously for a reason. And it has to do with this point, okay? When you're doing detailed technical practicing, you are utilizing your left side of the brain, which is on the left side of the screen there. That left side of the brain is the analytical, problem-solving side of your brain. And that is the really great part of your brain for the practice room, okay? It isn't the best part of your brain when it comes time to perform. The side of your brain you want to kick into gear at this point, in 1 week before, at the latest, and at your performance, is you want the right side of your brain, okay? The right side of the brain is where you have images in your head. That's where the on the porch practicing comes into play too. All those adjectives you came up with, character, storyline. That's what you want to tap into. If you do too much of detailed technical practicing in this week, I promise you that when you walk out onto the stage or when you go to record your jury material, your brain, that technical side of your brain, is going to be the one to leap into action first. And then it's going to be more likely that that analytical side is going to flip on those tapes that are negative. Okay? We're trying to avoid that as much as possible because it's very easy for that to happen. All right? So this week we're going to be focusing on, or the week before, you're going to be focusing on engaging the right side of your brain. All right? I wish I had like some good, clever thing with words. I'll have to do that in the future to help you remember which side is which. But just remember creativity, okay? No technical, creativity. Next thing on the list, more on the porch practicing for the very reason I just started indicating, right? It's on the porch practicing that can really help us focus and utilize the right side of our brain, okay? So do more of that. Another thing you can do, focus on practicing under tempo, all right? And what we talked about on the previous slide, work on places to breathe and to relax. But do that within a slower tempo so that it all works in a very organic way. You want your brain to always be relaxed, because if your brain is relaxed, your body will be relaxed. If your body's relaxed, your music is going to sound more natural and you're not going to tense up. Your sound is going to be better, so on and so forth. Okay? So keep on doing that as well. I'll touch on that in a sec. Okay, the next one is, and this is huge, practice accepting that your performance is not going to be perfect. And focus on the music instead, okay? I know this may sound absolutely bonkers to you, to practice lowering your expectations. And I don't mean saying, oh, this is going to be bad. That's not what I'm talking about. It's just basically saying, I know it's not going to be perfect, but you know what? I can still deliver a really bang up performance that's fantastic, that's going to move people, even if not all the notes are in the correct place. Okay? You have to practice that mind game. Performing is a mind game, especially at this stage of the game. There is not much you can do at this point to fix your technique, okay? I hate to say that, but the week before, it's too late. So, and if you dwell on it too much, again, that's tapping into the analytical side of your brain. We don't want that there, all right? Okay, the next one is to minimize your practice performances at tempo. So last week I said, yeah, do quite a few practice performances, live stream your thing. That just kind of gets it out there and helps you to see what you need to tweak, because last week you still had that time to really drill down on some of the technical difficulties, stuff like that. But this week we don't want to do that. It's too late, right? So again, the goal is to focus on the music, focus on relaxation, focus on breathing, and focus on positive tapes in your brain, all right? And I would say another side positive thing to minimizing your at performance tempo, or whatever you want to say, a side advantage of that is that you're going to not get stale. So trust me, if you do a lot of under tempo performances, you're going to actually get really excited. By the time you get to your performance, you're going to be like, oh, I can't wait to just let it go and see what happens. Usually. Or maybe I'm just strange. I don't know. You can try it. Tell me how it works for you. Okay, the last thing I want you to think about doing this week, and there's probably something else too, but anyway, do something fun for yourself. I know it's a little harder right now because we're all supposed to stay inside and away from people, but heck, if you like video games, play some video games. Not all day, but play some video games. Read books. Paint if you like to paint. Cook. Bake some cookies and eat them with no guilt. Do stuff that isn't related to your music, okay? Again, tapping into that creative side of your brain and helping to tone down this buildup of expectation for perfection and all that stuff. It won't help. Okay, last but not least. All right, this happens, folks, okay? Let's say you're at this point and you realize that you procrastinated too much. Or, okay, we're in this really weird time right now, right? Coronavirus. It has messed with our lifestyles. It's messed up school. It's messed up a lot of things, okay? But that's what we've been given. Those are our lemons, right? But we've got to move on, okay? So if at this point you realize that maybe you should have put in a little bit more practice, or you should have practiced a little bit differently, the most important thing to do is to forgive yourself. There's nothing else you can do. It's okay. And we've all been there. Your teachers have been there. I've been there. So just say to yourself, it's okay, and forgive yourself. That's huge. Then vow to try to be more proactive about this next semester, all right? It's important to learn from our misjudgments. That's what practicing is all about. So just say to yourself, okay, I see now why my teacher told me I should be starting to learn my piece, or why I should be farther ahead next semester, okay? Accept where you are technically at this point and figure out how you're going to make music, because that's the goal, that's the most important thing, with the technique you currently have. You can do it. It might mean that you might have to take a slower tempo. I hate to suggest this, but maybe it means that you ask your teacher if you can offer just a portion of a piece. All right? If you present a piece, like let's say you're doing a sonata movement, and the recapitulation, that last section or the coda, is a disaster. If you're doing your jury and you have no idea if you're gonna, like, especially if it's a live jury, you're gonna be nervous and freaking out the whole time, wondering either how that ending is gonna go, because you know it's not really prepared, or if you're in a live jury situation with them there, you're not sure that if they're gonna cut you off before it, right? And you're like, oh please, I hope they cut me off early. But the whole rest of your performance leading up to that could be messed up and compromised because you're so nervous. So sometimes the better tactic is to just admit the truth. Just say, I am sorry, I misjudged. I really don't think I can play this coda for my jury. Is there any way I can have an allowance and just not do that ending? So that's an option. Again, playing things more slowly, that's possible. There are times, like I have migraines on a pretty regular basis, and if I have a migraine, I cannot play things at the, like, fast things at normal tempo. That's okay. You can still make it sound pretty good, if not really good, at a slower tempo, okay? Then the other last thing to do is when you do practice performing, even at the stage, even when you know that maybe you should have been practicing more, when you do your practice performing, practice not being apologetic. Instead, practice focusing on the music, right? So this goes back to those negative tapes that we all play in our head. Let go of those ones that say, you should have practiced more, you're so stupid for starting late. Turn them off. Focus on the music. You might surprise yourself what you're capable of if you just turn off the tapes. Okay? So I'm just going to conclude with saying, listen, you guys, you've got this, okay? Most of you, if not all of you, have put in a lot of really good work, even in spite of this crazy time. So just enjoy this process and play with all your heart, and know that your teachers are rooting for you, all right? So thanks for joining me, and we're gonna see if I can figure out how to turn this off. And yeah, I think I'm doing it. So see you all later. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Again, I'll try to put a link to that presentation, the slides, in the comments for the YouTube video. So have fun, you guys, all right? Be good to yourselves.